Balancing going first versus second has always been a really tough task for a variety of TCGs. Naturally, whenever you go first, you will always have an additional turn over your opponent. Vanguard is no exception. In recent times, especially in this current meta, and most of V series, going first has been really powerful in Vanguard. Why is this? And how can Bushiroad help mitigate this gap between going first and second? Right now in Standard, there are quite a few things that you get for going second that first doesn't get. Whenever you go second, your starter will draw you an additional card, and you can attack the first turn, which allows you to drive check. So off the gate, you see 2 more cards than your opponent. And now with the new energy system, the player going second starts off with 3 energy as well. All of these are really good things that the going second player has. So why is going first then so powerful? The biggest thing right now is that the going first player gets to grade 3 first. For most decks in the game, the moment you hit grade 3 is when most of your effects are live, because you need either a specific Vanguard or your Vanguard is the cornerstone of your deck. So in a lot of cases, if you get to grade 3 first, then you can have a really strong grade 3 turn while the opponent is on grade 2. This matters because then the going second player is on base 10k power, which makes hitting magic numbers a lot easier for the going first player on the grade 3 turn, and even on the grade 2 turn. When the going first player reaches grade 2, then both grade 1s and grade 2s can hit the opponent's Vanguard without any boosters. But if you have a grade 2 boosted by a grade 1, then you're swinging 18k into the opponent's 8k, which demands a 15k shield, and also gets over a defensive trigger. While the going second player, whenever they ride up to grade 2, and they have a grade 2 and a grade 1 in a column that swings 18k, the opponent will be grade 2, which will be at 10k power. This means that a defensive trigger will stop a lot of aggression that a going second player will have. In return, the going second player gets to attack on their first turn, so the grade 1s can hit the opponent's grade 1. And then the same thing happens whenever the going first player reaches grade 3, because then a 13k plus an 8k booster will swing 21, which will hit over a defensive. And a lot of times, by the time a player hits grade 3, a lot of the units are gaining additional power. This means the player going second has to deal with a lot more power a lot faster than the going first player has to, which a lot of the time, to guard these grade 2 and grade 3 turns, the going first player will have to use both of the cards, if not more, that they got for going second. This problem gets exacerbated when decks naturally just have a strong grade 3 turn going either first or second. A deck like Varga can really abuse the fact that they went first because of a restanding Vanguard and a lot of their units being able to gain power like Boulder Axe Dragon or Shura. And if the going second player utilizes the first turn to be aggressive against the Varga player, then Varga will get a ton of counterblast that they can then utilize to be even more aggressive on this grade 3 turn. A lot of the times if Varga hits a crit on this turn, then it's very devastating for the going second player. And then this problem compounds on itself due to Persona Ride, which a large majority of the time, the going first player will have access to it before the going second player, which means a deck that is very strong on turn 3 can then Persona Ride on the following turn after they had a very strong grade 3 turn, and a lot of times pressure lethal. Quite a lot of decks can struggle farming to be able to survive a turn like this, even with a grade 3 turn. Another example is Ale Calibra, where it'll be swinging 3 times for 40k plus, and then on the Divine Skill turn, they'll be able to deal a free damage as well, making this deck very powerful whenever it's going first. Now, this doesn't mean going first is always the best for every deck. There are certain decks that do like going second. Currently, the 2 main mechanics that like going second are Stride decks, which gives you access to Stride whenever both players are at grade 3, and Mask decks, which allows you to access Persona Ride whenever the opponent is grade 3. Also, a lot of the grade 4 decks got cards that allow them to superior ride into the grade 4 if the opponent is grade 3 or higher. A lot of these decks have mechanics that are equivalent to ramping in other TCGs. If you want to know more about that, check out my Mana Curves video where I go more in depth about grade ratios and ramping and all that stuff. These are decks that typically like going second because when they get to go second, then they can access their mechanics faster than the opponent will. I think having only these decks that like going second though isn't completely the solution. So how can Bushiroad make the gap better between going first and second? The answer is to give decks additional tools that they can utilize whenever they end up going second. This can sometimes mean accelerating their game plan or giving them additional effects whenever the opponent is grade 3 or higher. So I think a deck that used to be a really good example of this was Levi-Dross doing set 4. Levi-Dross utilizes Infinity Eyes markers in order to pump their unit's powers and lower the opponent's unit's powers. And a lot of the cards in the deck gain effects depending on if there's a marker in the same column as it or the number of markers you have in play. Levi-Dross has the ability to give you and your opponent a single Infinity Eyes marker, making it a total of 2 in play. So when going first, your primary power card that you would get access to is Foxhill, which allows you to give the ability to attack from back row to one of your rear guards and plus 10k power. This effect was pretty good, but Levi-Dross itself was very rarely super oppressive whenever it went first, due to cards like Huli and a Notagaster needing 3 Infinity Eyes markers in play to gain their power, and a Notagaster would gain the ability to attack from back row as well. Now, when going second, Levi-Dross also has access to its Divine skill, which needs the opponent to be at grade 3 or greater, and then you can Soul Blast one to give both you and your opponent a marker, and Levi-Dross gains 10k and a crit for the turn. This was low-key a really strong effect to have whenever you go second, because then it would accelerate your game plan to, instead of having 2 markers in play, to have 4 markers in play, which would turn on Huli's power boost and a Notagaster's attack from back row skill. So in a very nice in-engine way, Levi-Dross could play going second and would be able to stabilize its game plan a lot better than normal. I think most decks should have something close to this, where going first, the deck is fine, but going second, you accelerate your game plan a bit faster. The going second player's grade 3 turn, I think power level wise, should be in between the going first player's grade 3 turn and then Persona Ride turn, which I think original Levi-Dross ended up doing very well. Now, this changed when set 5 came out, and Levi-Dross was able to make 3 markers going first. But I do think original Levi-Dross was a masterclass on how to balance going first versus second within a deck. If you find this content interesting or helpful, make sure to subscribe. One of my goals this year is to hit 10k subs, which is very ambitious, because right now we're just above 4k, so it's more than double where I'm at, but I think it's very much doable. So yeah, these videos typically take a lot of time and effort, so if you do enjoy it, please subscribe. Anyway, back to the vid. Now, not every deck has a specific mechanic built around it like Levi-Dross does Infinity Eyes markers. It could be a bit harder to have a cohesive game plan that can accelerate itself. There are a couple lines of text Bushiroad could add to cards or change cards to in order to make them more balanced this way. An example of a card that doesn't do this are the new grade 2s in set 7 they revealed that allows you to create new Guardian tickets, which are essentially 10k shields, all for a Soul Blast if you have a card in your ride deck or your Vanguard has Persona Ride. These cards are either going to be really, really powerful or kind of whatever, but in my head, they're going to be really strong for a lot of decks, mainly because going first with these is so good compared to when going second. Let's be in a scenario where both players have these in their decks. Let's say they both will play one on their second turn. The going first player, whenever they play it, will be able to add a Guardian ticket to hand and then have 2 10k swings to the opponent's 8k. This can be even stronger if the going first player has grade 1s they can put as boosters. But for this example, let's just have these 2. If the going second player wants to guard this, they have to guard with cards already in their hand to do it. And now the going second player, whenever they ride up and then they call their grade 2, then whenever they attack with a grade 2 rear guard, then the opponent is able to either just intercept or guard with the free ticket that the opponent got in their hand, making it much easier for the going first player to guard the going second player's attacks. This problem can get even worse if the going first player sees multiple of these on the first grade 2 turn, because then they can attack 3 times while also being able to defend all of the opponent's attacks on the following turn. This is a type of card that I think is pretty poorly designed, all because the going first player can utilize these very effectively. I think a line of text these cards should have had are like the grade 1 discard cyclers from last festival collection, where you can't use these effects unless your Vanguard's grade is equal to or lower than your opponent's Vanguard. If it had this, then the going first player would not be able to utilize these until the opponent catches up to their grade. This would give going second a better ability to be aggressive on their grade 2 turn, while also being able to help deal with the grade 3 turn that the opponent has. Because a lot of grade 3 turns these days are pretty strong. In return, the second effect could have been something better that even the going first player could utilize. But outside of that, I think that would have been a much cleaner way in order to utilize these effects. So realistically, more cards should say if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or higher, or if your Vanguard's grade is equal to or lower than your opponent's Vanguard. Bushiroad has done a bit of a better job recently. You can see with most of the Destined 1 decks that a lot of the effects require the opponent to be grade 3 or greater, especially the multi-attack effects, but they do miss the mark sometimes. With a deck like the new Levy Dross deck, where you can now accelerate to 3 markers on your first grade 3 turn when going first, which gives you access to Anotagaster attacking from back row and Foxhill giving that same skill to someone else, giving you access to the new Carnet, which allows you to revive if you have 3 markers in play. And then they really should have put if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater tag on the Squirrel, which gives this deck even more power. So I think if Bushiroad just thinks about the mechanics a little bit more, I think a lot of these going first versus second issues can mitigate itself quite well. I think a lot of cards could have said, especially in new Levy Dross, if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater. And I think more decks should have ways to accelerate their game plan if the opponent is grade 3 or greater. I think Levy Dross is a very clean way on doing that, because right now it feels like the going first player just has a ton of more agency, and if they just see the correct pieces, then they will just win the game. This is mainly true from the 3 new forms from set 5, and going down from this power level might end up being really hard without a ban list. And even before this meta, decks like Shoujo Doji was insanely powerful when going first, and they didn't really gain anything extra whenever they went second. So the deck was just really strong just when going first. It could still play when going second just because of how strong the engine of it is. But if you were in the Shoujo Doji mirror match, a lot of the time the going first Shoujo Doji player had more breathing room and had more time being oppressive to the opponent. So yeah, that's about it. Mainly, I just want Bushiroad to have more potential comeback mechanics in decks whenever they're going second, or just word their cards better. I don't think any deck should be facing a 40k plus swing on while they're on grade 2. But right now, it currently is and is kind of common. The other potential lazy answer they could do is attacking more start of game procedures. We saw this in V Premium and Premium, where they added the Quick Shield and then they added Harmonix Messiah, which gives you a Guardian ticket. I think for Premium, it makes sense they did that because there was such a wide card pool already that it's hard to like go back and fix things, especially when they don't print anything for these formats anymore. But Standard, they're actively making new cards for it, and I think going a route of making more tickets or more start of game procedures is just not the way to go. I think a lot of this issue could be fixed if Bushiroad just like thought about their cards a bit more and try to be a bit more creative on how to make going second better without having to play a mask package, right? So yeah, that's it. Just ended up rambling about this, but I think it's a pretty cool discussion that is worth talking about, and why Levy Dross was one of my favorite decks before set 5. In set 5 meta, I still enjoy playing it, but I can definitely see the oppression side of it whenever I'm going first. I think a lot of the things this deck is doing should not be allowed in this game, but I'll ride with it until they actually hit it. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll see you guys in the next one.